Hello friends, we're on a quest to raise the percentage of players that have beaten Oxygen Not Included, which means they completed the final objective by sending a rocket to the temporal tear without using sandbox tools or debug commands. We started at only 1.4%, and I need your help to raise that number. This video and many others will be dedicated to helping players finish the game, and if you do, you can send me your save file using the form in the description, and I may show it off in an upcoming video. With that said, let's get started. That's zombie for hello friends. Today we're going to be talking about Spore Kids and zombie spores. This is surprisingly a topic I haven't covered that much in the past, but I'm pretty sure the frequency of Spore Kids spawning on maps has significantly increased in some recent updates, and I see a lot more comments from people talking about how they lost their colony to zombie spore outbreaks, so I figured now would be a good time to talk about it. In short, Spore Kids are plants that create zombie spore germs. They'll typically spawn in a small pocket with some carbon dioxide, and if that pocket is ever dug out without some careful planning, those germs can infect your duplicants and give them by far the worst disease in the game, which is them becoming a shambling zombie. The duplicants that get infected with this don't want to eat brains, but rather they are incredibly slow and therefore cause all kinds of problems once they're in that state. Sometimes they can be so slow that they'll starve to death because they can't move fast enough to find food before they run out of energy. It's pretty rough. Since the disease will simply lower the stats of duplicants, if your colony is old enough and your duplicants have leveled up, a zombie outbreak is less crushing as the game goes on longer, so sometimes these outbreaks are survivable. But that's the key word, survival. There isn't really a scenario in which your colony will be thriving if one of these outbreaks occur, so we're going to walk through the 3 means of dealing with this disease. Number 1 is prevention, which is simply not letting an outbreak occur in the first place. Obviously, an outbreak will happen eventually, so the next thing I'll talk about is containment to prevent it from spreading further. And lastly, quarantining the sick duplicants so they aren't at risk of infecting more of the colony or dying due to their slow movement. Okay, now we're in game, and we are going to talk about preventing a zombie spore outbreak by dealing with the Spore Kids and zombie spores that you might already have on your map somewhere. I have not seen this in some of the places that people say that they've seen it on their maps, like in the ice biome or something like that, but there are new little, I guess, sections of tiles that could be spawned that contain Spore Kids like this, that I have seen spawn at random parts around the map, that if you're just kind of digging around and you don't notice them, they can cause a huge problem. There might also just be loose Spore Kids that are planted down here in the oil biome as well that can be very common. And also, if you have the map trait on for the fossils, the amber fossil spawns with a Spore Kid right here. So there's a lot of ways that you could accidentally dig into this and cause huge problems. So if I were doing something like this and just having duplicants come in here and dig this out, that would release zombie spores into my base, and that's a great way for your colony to get infected. And I mean, at this stage of the game, it'd probably be game over because your duplicants would be so slow, they'd barely do anything. So here's what we're going to do instead. Instead, I'm going to dig a small little spot near where the zombie spores are. They're usually self-contained in a little pit of carbon dioxide like this. This carbon dioxide I need to treat as like an infection area. I need to get rid of it. So we need to safely enter and exit this without exchanging any gases. So what I'm going to do is have duplicants come down here and dig a small hole. And I'm going to place some tiles here. Let me turn on my sandbox tools so that they do this a little bit faster. Get rid of these commands. There we go. So I'm going to have duplicants dig out a little hole here, and I'm going to fill this up with some water. And we are going to create a liquid lock, which is something that I talk about a lot. I do have some separate videos that I'm planning on making. I have talked about this in a whole bunch of other places, so hopefully this is not too foreign of a concept. But it is. If it is, I'll just go over it real quick. The idea of a liquid lock is basically you are going to set up a place where liquid is blocking 2 sections of your base that are filled with gas. And if those 2 sections will never exchange gases back and forth because they won't be able to go through the liquid. The liquid will basically block that from happening. So now that we have this, there's a couple things that we're going to need as well, as our duplicants will eventually need to go in here and do some work. But I don't want them to get infected, and we can protect them by using some Atmo suits. And I'm going to stress using Atmo suits here because you could use oxygen masks, but the problem is that your duplicant will still exhale. when they're using those oxygen masks, and they will put carbon dioxide out into the environment, which is the exact problem we're trying to avoid. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to create a suit bank here, which is just one checkpoint and a bunch of atmosuit docks. It's kind of deep in the research tree, by the way, so if you don't have this research by the time you're dealing with this problem, then just don't dig out the area and just make sure to keep it sealed off for the time being until you have a way to deal with it. So I'm going to put up some suit banks here. We'll connect them up to power. We don't want to wait for them to create all the suits and stuff, so let me just go ahead and spawn one with my sandbox tools here. There we go. And then we'll have our duplicants deliver it whenever they wake up, because of course it's nighttime and they like to go to sleep about this time. And from here, let me turn my sandbox tools off, and we'll make the duplicants do the work now. Just to show that this is safe for my duplicants to actually come in here and do this. But I'm going to put a gas pump in, and this gas pump is going to be used to assure that we can pump out everything from this area without any of the gas transferring into our main base. And we can do so if our duplicants need to come in here and work safely. So I'm going to go ahead and close this off and start to dig out tiles that will eventually connect this stuff together. Our suits are going to get filled up. It's going to take them just a little bit to get all that. In the meantime, what we're going to be doing with this gas is we're going to be sending it out into space. I talk about this a lot, and that is eventually you'll need to deal with all the carbon dioxide buildup that you have in your base. And one of the best ways to get rid of it, and along with any other gases you might not want, like chlorine, for example, you might just want to send it out into space because that's a cheap way to deal with it. So I already have a setup here that runs a pipe all the way out into space that has a vent out there so we can vent the carbon dioxide that we don't want. There we go. They just built the pump there. So then all I need to do is connect up the lines, and I need to connect up the power and get this all done. We just need to wait for duplicants to get this all dug out. It'll take them just a little bit, so let's just go ahead and turn on our sandbox and pretend that they did it. There. So, once my duplicants get all these pipes built, we'll start pumping out all the carbon dioxide, but that's kind of only part of the way to fix this. We still need to get rid of these spore kids, and we don't want them here anymore. And since we have our liquid lockup, and since duplicants will need to get in suits before they go in here, we should be safe to just dig this up. And we want to dig this up in a way that we assure that the seeds are somewhere that are not going to be out loose somewhere that might get accidentally replanted, which can happen if you have pips on your map, which is very common on the not first map. That can be very common in the forest biomes. Sometimes they'll spawn here, or you could get them through care packages or something like that. Pips will basically grab these seeds and replant them, and we do not want that to happen. So the way I'm going to protect against that is I'm going to put a storage bin somewhere underwater, or you could put it in its own like little sealed off room or something like that. And I'll ask for spore kid seeds. So here we go. And I'll ask for it at a very high priority so that if we happen to find any other spore kid seeds, my duplicants will go grab them and they will drop them in a storage bin to assure that they don't get replanted. From here, once you have this setup done, we just need to wait for the pipes to be set up so that all the carbon dioxide gets sent out into space, and it shouldn't take too long to vacuum it out. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. All right, there we go. Now this has all been vacuumed out. There's no more zombie spores to be worried about. All of the spore kid seeds are sitting in this bin right here. So at this point, we can just have duplicants come back over and deconstruct everything, and we can start to use this area like we would anywhere else. So that's probably the easiest or the best way to get rid of it if it's already contaminated in an area here. But if you don't have containment on it and it starts to spill out into your base, let's cover that next and how to deal with it. All right. Let's say that you find yourself in a situation where you're digging around the map and hollowing it out as we would typically do, but you accidentally open up a pocket that has spore kids in it and zombie spores start spilling out into your base and you don't notice. Let's talk about how to get this situation under control. So first of all, I'm paused because keeping things paused while you're fixing problems is definitely not a problem. So you can keep it paused for as long as you want. But note that the zombie spores are starting to kind of creep up here because it will start to transfer into the oxygen that's nearby. So the first thing that we really need to do is contain the spill area as much as we can. We could wait for duplicants to get suits up and all that kind of stuff, but all I want to do right off the bat is just get everything walled off as much as possible. So I want to get duplicants down here and put it on a pretty high priority. I'm just going to do this in sandbox for right now. Put it on pretty high priority to close off the entire part of this base until we're ready to start advancing something down in there to clean it out. So you want to also start the wall from pretty far away, because the zombie spores germs will actually spread pretty fast. So if I need to start it even way up here, or isolate these batteries and kind of put them down there as well, whatever I need to do to build a giant wall here is going to be what my priority is. Coincidentally, in this run, I already had a section that was pretty walled off as it is, just because this is where all the debris was falling and that's where I was sweeping it up. So this is a good spot to start creating some walls here to contain this. So I'm going to want to just wall this off the best I can. And you can start off by fully walling this. There's nothing wrong with that. And I just want to create an area. This is now a huge area that's just a giant spill area that I have to consider as very dangerous. But at least if it's walled off, then I know that there's no way that the germs are going to get into the next part, assuming that I do some diligence and double check and make sure that everything is closed off. So now that I have this closed off, let's talk about how you would clean this whole area, because this is going to take forever if I have to vacuum this all out. And that could be a quite slow process. The previous section was pretty easy to vacuum it all out because it was a small area, but now we have a huge spill area on our hands that we need to take care of. So what I want to do is make sure that duplicants have to get in suits before they come down here. And you can create another liquid lock like we did before. I'm always going to recommend this because it's a very safe, nice way to do this that isn't too expensive. So quick, simple liquid lock like that. Let me just brush in some water here. There we go. I'm always amused that I can type that with one hand. And then we need to create our stations for suits. So we'll go ahead and toss these up again. You could use oxygen masks here. I just prefer the suits because they're a lot more universal and they don't put out extra gases when they're in there. So I don't know. You could use oxygen masks for this. There's nothing really wrong with that. Let me ask for suits here and we can hook it up to oxygen. I'm probably not going to have my duplicants come down here and do much just because we just saw them working in here. But now that we have our liquid lockup and their suits and all that fun stuff, we can start opening this up and start doing what we need to do to clean this area up. And note that this is going to all get filled with zombie spores at a very high concentration. So what I'd like to do is I'll just go ahead and deconstruct these buildings here to open this up. Now duplicants should be able to get down there. And I want to start advancing one of two things, especially if you're in the base game, and this is the biggest thing that I recommend. If you have a ventilation system, it's usually going to be down towards the bottom of your base. And if you've kept it running for a little while, ideally you'll have a handful of tanks filled with chlorine. And the reason that I'd want to do this is chlorine can be used for a whole bunch of purposes, such as keeping your food clean, or you could run some specific setups that require chlorine. Or in this case, this is going to be very handy for us because we could just run the chlorine down into this bottom biome and kind of flood it with chlorine, which is going to kill all the germs. So if I do that, this will keep a nice cycle of chlorine going on. Oh, by the way, now that I have this all closed off and duplicants can safely enter down here, I need to stop the source. So I need to get rid of these sporkid seeds. I need to set a place for my duplicants to take them and hide them away from these pips. So I'll drop it in some containers that are underwater here. Well, not pips. Sporkid. Why do I not have this in the list? Well, I don't know. Probably because I'm using some debug stuff. But let's just pretend that I did that. And I'll just delete them for now and act like we put them under there since we already showed that part. So there we go. Now we have a sealed off area. And eventually this is all going to be filled with oxygen or chlorine or carbon dioxide or whatever to get rid of that. You can also move your pumps down to start getting rid of all the carbon dioxide, and that'll be what eventually flushes and cycles through all of this chlorine. But as the chlorine spreads, let me go into like super speed here. As the chlorine spreads, it'll start to kill the zombie spores, and eventually this chlorine will kind of take over the area and push everything out of the way. So that's a good way to decontaminate this. I'm going to also provide another option. If you're in Spaced Out, you can either accelerate this or you can do a different method if you don't have chlorine. And what you can do is start to plant some wheezeworts, which I've talked about a handful of times. But specifically, the reason you'd want to do this is wheezeworts will provide radiation, which I don't want my duplicants. I don't have to wait for my duplicants to come down here. So let's go ahead and drop one in. These wheezeworts will create radiation, and radiation will also kill germs. So I can start just planting wheezeworts around the area if I have some extra wheezewort seeds and do that. Another option we could do that is very available on most maps is we can start bringing shine bugs down here, because shine bugs will also produce radiation. So if I drop a handful of these, as they fly around, they'll clean up the area because they'll be producing radiation, and the radiation will kill the germs. So there you go, these little radiation sources flying around. You could just release a bunch of those in here and just kind of wait until they clean everything out. So yeah, there's a handful of ways to deal with this spill. Chlorine's a good one. The shine bugs are obviously very easy to get access to most of the time. And then you can just kind of keep this all sealed off until everything is all cleaned up. Then once it's all cleaned up, you can start opening up these areas and letting your duplicants go down here freely like they were before. It might take a little while, but it's a lot better than having an outbreak in your colony, because outbreaks in your colony are pretty devastating. Speaking of which, that's the last thing that we need to cover in this video, so let's talk a little bit about getting your colony under control if you've had a pretty severe zombie spore outbreak. Alright, so here's the worst case scenario, and that is that you have multiple duplicants that have zombie spores. This is going to vary greatly depending on what phase of the game you're in and how well leveled your duplicants are. So in this case, and I guess in pretty much any case, you should probably take a look at the duplicants that are infected and see what their athletic score is. I would say if it's down around -5 or lower, it's probably worthwhile to take those duplicants and stick them in a room that they cannot leave and kind of provide everything for them while you get the rest of their needs taken care of. So I'm going to create a room here that is effectively our little quarantine area. I'm not really worried about the virus spreading. I don't think that it spreads the same way that slime lung does, but please correct me if I'm wrong on that. I've never seen them actually spread it before, but I haven't also had a ton of colonies that are infected with zombie spores. So for the one that is very slow and is kind of a risk to themselves, I'm just going to put them inside this room and not let them leave. So you can kind of select the doors on either end and disable the direction that would let them go out of those doors. Then you can find that duplicant by just kind of scrolling through this. I wish there was an easier way to find duplicants, by the way. And just send them over into a room like so. And then we will have to provide them with, at the very minimum, food. So this duplicant is now stuck. They will not be able to leave, so he's going to sleep on the floor. We need to just send some food in, and we can do that by just moving some of our food that we have and just dropping it in there for them. They'll stay there for a little while. One of the unfortunate things is that it takes a long time for them to recover from zombie spores. But if we go ahead and get a cure for them, that could be another way to solve this. If you have multiple duplicants that have this problem, by the way, let's run through the other ones that have it and take a look at their stats. So Nicola's, I think, fine. Athletics is 1. Let's take a look at the other person that's infected. Looks like it's Pei. -4. Yeah, let's send Pei in here as well, just so we have 2 of them, by the way. So let's get Pei in here. Not let him leave. There we go. There. So, we now have 2 duplicants in here, but we can create some stuff to get them cured. So let's go ahead and create the buildings that we need. So first of all, we need a disease clinic. And the disease clinic, it needs to be inside a hospital. And we need to have a duplicant that has the actual ability to use this. So advanced medical care. You really can just assign one person to do this, and somebody that has a decent amount of extra skill points to go around. This is not something that I really think you need to assign to a lot of duplicants. I have my little debug tools on here, by the way, which is why I'm able to do this without the proper points. So we have that, but the other thing we need is a serum vial. So let me get the rest of this hospital built out, which if we take a look at the room requirements, it's going to take some medical equipment, which we have, a toilet and a mess table. So if we do something like this, let's find our mess table first, and then the toilet, we don't even need to necessarily have it working. You probably want it to be working so the duplicants inside here can actually use it. and not just make a big mess all the time. So I guess we could just hook it up to the piping that we already have for our toilet system. So there we go. And we just need to drop it into its own room before we get the hospital room bonus. There. So now, this is a hospital, and we can now use the disease clinic if we have the right medicine for this. So let's go ahead and put down an apothecary to create that medicine, which I believe, is it in medicine or is it in stations? I always have a hard time finding some of these. I guess I could just do this. Apothecary. There we go. Who cares where it is now? We can go ahead and put this down, and the serum vial is what's needed to cure zombie spores, but we need sun nymph eggs. So if we need this, one thing we can do is we can start up a small ranch for shine bugs, and shine bugs have a chance of laying sun nymph eggs under some conditions. So let's get this built out pretty quickly and see what we need. So if we just kind of build out a room like this, it needs to be a stable so we can at least tame them, which will increase their egg laying rates. We grab a station here for grooming these, and also a critter drop off like this. How big is this room right now? 111. Okay, so let's just kind of shorten this a little bit. I don't know how to do it. All right, so we could probably grab a handful of these shine bug and shine nymphs. We'll just do this, and I'll just go ahead and spawn some of them just for the convenience of it. So, shine bugs. There. Once these are tamed, they will have a chance of laying some nymph eggs, but only if they start eating gristleberries. So you could try to start feeding them gristleberries in an attempt to increase this egg chance, but it might take a little bit, and that's pretty expensive to get. Honestly, the biggest concern here is just to make sure that these duplicants that are a hazard to themselves are stuck in a place where they won't be a hazard. They could still help out, by the way. We will cure one of them here in just a bit. But they could still help out if you had to keep them stuck here for a little while. You could drop in some manual generators so they can at least generate power while they're doing nothing. This will also help increase their athletics so that they might be able to be just safely released if we let them out. We have more infections here, by the way. Looks like my containment didn't quite take effect in this cycle. But yeah, as long as they're running on here, they'll eventually get their athletics up. You could also put some other stuff in here to help them, you know, stay busy. You could put your cooking stuff in here. If you have anything to operate... Sorry, this is an older colony. It's hard for me to remember where everything is. You could have them help out with research. You could drop in some other buildings, like if they have a rock crusher or something like that. And you could keep them busy at least while they're stuck in here. Why did you not use the bathroom? Okay, that was weird. Yeah, so there's a lot you could do while keeping them in here, and this will at least make sure that they're not going to die, because they won't be able to go very far anyway. Let's go ahead and spawn a serum vial so we can show you what it looks like when it's all ready. Well, actually, yeah, let's just do that. The recipe for it's right here. It's just a sun nymph eggs and some steel, but assuming we actually get that far, let's go ahead and bump up the priority on this and get one of these duplicants over here to start getting cured. It looks like Nicola's hopping in. There we go. Then we just need the actual person that's capable of the medicine to come over here and do this. I think it's Harold. Yep, he's on his way. So there we go. He's just going to inject the serum vial, write some stuff down, polish the... oh no, he's using the stethoscope. And there you go. Someone's getting cured. Yay! Alright, there you go. So if you had all that stuff, that's how you could take care of this. But in the meantime, you could cram a whole bunch of duplicants in here to kind of keep everything afloat and just wait it out if you needed to. Again, it's very important to make sure that you have containment on any issues that would be down here. Oh, no wonder more people are getting zombie spores, because I'm letting them go down here and cause a problem. I also deleted a bunch of stuff here so that I could film some other parts of the video, but yeah. Anyway, so if you had containment on it, and if you have duplicants that are going to be a threat to themselves kind of stuck in here, you could definitely recover and keep things rolling. It's not going to be pleasant, but it'll at least be better than your whole colony falling apart. Okay, friends, hopefully that gives a good idea of how to survive a zombie outbreak or prevent it from happening in the first place. Again, we're on a quest to raise the completion percentage of Oxygen Not Included, so if you need help with anything on your quest to completing the game, please drop a comment, or of course, if you have any questions about this video, let me know. See you in the next video, and have a great day.